Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're doing day 4 of our first unit, and the topic is comparing rational numbers. So there's more than just like 3, but we've already learned scientific notation and how to how to change that to be standard form. We've learned how to deal with squares and square roots and how to change that to be standard form. Now we just want to review fractions, decimals, and percent, because all of these different forms will be used, or like any kind, or yeah, will be used. They're basically any kind of representation for a rational number. So when you're comparing them, it's very helpful to make sure they all get into the same format. Okay? They all should be in the same form when you compare them. And they all look different. It's very, very difficult to compare them. So you need to change them all to the same form. So first we're going to go ahead and start with fractions to decimals. In order to change a fraction to a decimal, you just divide the numerator by the denominator. So the top divided by the bottom. So write the following fraction as a decimal. This is our first example. So we have 2/5. So to change that, we're just going to do 2 divided by 5. And we can do that in the calculator, and we get 0.4. So that's our decimal. You guys are going to try these two on your own, write them as decimal. You can pause the video or come back to it later. The next conversion would be a fraction to a percentage. So basically, to change a fraction to a percent, you'd first, this is not written here, so please listen, you first need to change it to a decimal. And then once you have it as a decimal, move the decimal 2 times to the right. You're just going to shift the decimal point over 2 spaces, and then you'll have and then put a percent sign on the end. Okay? So example 2, write the following fraction as a percent. So we have 2/5 again, which we just did in the calculator, and we got 0.4. We're going to move that decimal place 2 spaces to the right now. So 1, 2. And that second space didn't actually have anything in it, so I'm going to add a 0 in there. So now what that means is that equals 40%. The decimal point is behind the 0, and instead of putting a decimal point, we're just going to put a percent sign. So 40%. You guys are going to try to change these two fractions to percents. They'll change from decimals first, and then move the decimal point over 2 spaces. So you can pause the video or come back to it later. Alright, moving on. The next one is a decimal to a fraction. So this is working backwards a little bit. To change a decimal to a fraction, you're going to read it out, think about it out loud? No. Think about it in your head and then write it the way you read it. Okay? And then always simplify your fraction. Okay? Always make sure it's simplified. So just as a quick review. Say I had this decimal. I would read it as 5/10. When there's only one number after the decimal point, it's a tenth. Okay? To change that to a fraction, I would just take the number behind the decimal point and put it over 10. If I had 2 numbers after the decimal point, that's 51 hundredths. So I would take 51 and put it over 100. If I had 3 decimal points after or 3 places after the decimal point, 3 numbers, that's 512 thousandths. So I would take 512 and put it over 1,000. Okay? So here we only have one number after the decimal point, so we would write it as 4 over 10. And that is a fraction, but it's not a simplified fraction. So to simplify it, I'd look at both numbers, 4 and 10. What could I divide both 4 and 10 by? I could divide them both by 2. So I divide them both by 2. What's left over is 2 over 5. That's my fraction. Okay? You guys are going to try to write these as your, what am I trying to say? Trying to write these on your own, decimals to fractions. Do not write your answer as a mixed number though, okay? So, it can be a little confusing. especially B, all right? So here's how you would do it, all right? You would figure out what number you're putting the 6 over, and then add however many more. So this one says 1, so add whatever the bottom number is to 6, okay? We'll go over this in class for sure, but go ahead and try it, see if you know what it could be, and then we'll go over it for sure, okay? Don't forget, if you guys have any questions, write them down now, and we can answer them in class. All right, now a decimal to a percent. Very similar to how we went from a percent to a decimal. So to change a decimal to a percent, we're going to move the decimal point over to the right. 2 times the right. I kind of already showed it to you because we had to convert a fraction to a decimal and then to a percent. So very similar. We have 0.4, which means we're going to move it over 2 spaces. 2 spaces. Fill that missing space with the 0, so it equals 40%. You go ahead and try these on your own. Okay. A percent to a fraction. Oh, this didn't. To change a percent to a fraction, write it over 100, and then you just simplify. Okay. So here we have 40%, means we're going to write 40 over 100, and then just go ahead and simplify. What could I divide both 40 and 100 by? 20. Divide them both, you get 2/5. That's your simplified fraction. Go ahead and try these two on your own. If you want to do it now, you can, or you can come back to it. It's up to you. And finally, to change a percent to a decimal, we're just going to replace the percentage with a decimal point and then move that decimal point over 2 spaces, but this time to the left. Okay, so write 40% as a fraction. We've got 40, I just changed the decimal point, or the percent sign to a decimal point, and I'm going to move it over 2 spaces to the left. So now it's in front of the 4, giving me 0.4 or 0.40. Either one's correct. Now, just in case this comes up, because I think it's about to, if you already have a decimal point in the number, just drop the percent sign. So now I would have 5.7, and I'm going to move that decimal point over 2 spaces. So 1, 2. I filled in the empty one with a 0, so my decimal would become 0.057. Okay? Now try these two on your own. Okay? Now we're just going to complete the chart by converting the number that they gave us. So we talked about all these different conversions already. So here I was given a fraction. To change a fraction to a decimal, I would just divide 1 divided by 2, and in the calculator I get 0.5. And then now that I have a decimal, I can change that to a percentage by moving my decimal point over 2 spaces. So that would give me 50%. Okay. Here I have 0.33 repeating. Now, if you ever have a repeating bar, okay, when you have to write it as a fraction, so there's only 2 numbers here, so you would think this would be hundredths. You'd do 33 hundredths. However, the repeating bar actually means to subtract 1 from that. So it would be 33 over 99, which I would simplify to be 1/3. Okay, so a repeating bar means to subtract 1 from your denominator. Okay, that goes with tenths, hundredths, thousandths, all that stuff. Whenever you see a repeating bar, just take 1 away. And then I can take this decimal and change it to a percent by moving it over 2 spaces. But I have to remember that behind it there's still another 3. So it might be helpful if I write it, I'm going to type 0.333 and it keeps going, just like that. Because when I move it over 2 spaces, now that's 33.3 repeating. Okay? So that's how I'd write it, 33.3 repeating percent. Here I have 66 2/3%. So we don't ever use mixed numbers in pre-algebra. So we're going to convert this 2/3 to a decimal. So I'm just going to do 2 divided by 3, and that gives me 0.6 repeating. So now I'm going to write it as 66, because that was the whole number, 0.6 repeating as my percentage. Okay? So to change this to a decimal, I would just move the decimal point here over 2 spaces to the left. So I just have 0.666 repeating, which I could write as 0.66 repeating or 0.6 repeating. That would be fine too. To change that to a fraction, just like I did up here, a repeating bar means -1, so it would be 66 over 99, which would reduce to 2/3. Okay? And now we have 0.25, so that I could rewrite as 25 over 100, change it to a fraction, and that would reduce to 1/4. Or to change it as percent, I could just move it over 2 spaces, so it'd become 25%. Here we have 3/4, so 3 divided by 4 gives me 0.75. Move it over 2 spaces to the right, 75%. Alright, so this is an add-on. The rest of this chart, I want you to complete, or table, I want you to complete on your own. So I want you to try to fill these in on your own. Some might be a little bit easier than others, which is fine. Okay? But try it. Just give it a try. Okay? And we will go over the rest of this chart or table in class to make sure you understand it. And that's all we got to do then. Okay? Alright, lastly, we're going to compare numbers now. So now that we know how to convert all these different forms, we're going to use that to be able to compare different numbers. So here we have to compare the following numbers using less than, greater than, or equal to. We have 45% and 0.45 repeating. In order to compare these, we need them in the same form. So the general form that we're probably most likely going to put them in is decimal form, because that's basically our standard form. Okay, so I'm going to convert this percent by moving the decimal point over 2 spaces to the left. So it becomes 0.45, and I just added an extra 0 on the end. Okay, and then on here, instead of writing a repeating bar, I'm just going to repeat it a couple times. So it becomes 0.454545 dot dot dot. Okay? Now to compare them, I'm going to look at the first couple of numbers. So 4 and 4, they're equal right now. I'm going to look at the next number. 5 and 5, they're equal right now. 0 and 4, they're not equal. So I'm looking at these first 3 numbers. The 0 means that this one is smaller than this guy. Okay? We're only going to use equal if all the digits, the entire number, are going to be the same. As soon as we get to the third one, they're not the same anymore, so it's not equal. So I can compare that third digit here. 0 and 4 means this guy is bigger, so I'm going to use the less than symbol so it looks like the alligator is going after the bigger number. So this means that 45% is less than 0.45 repeating. Okay, you guys are going to try this one on your own. You can pause the video or come back to it. It's up to you. Finally, we're going to do a multiple choice and see which number correctly completes the statement below. 1/4 is greater than something, which is greater than, this is wrong. Okay guys, sorry. This is wrong. I need you to correct something. Okay? Things happen all the time and it's okay. We're not going to use these symbols. These symbols are wrong. So cross these out just like I'm doing. And instead, I want you to write over it these symbols. We want less than symbols. Okay? And another one. So, now this will make sense. We have 1/4 is less than something. Something. We don't know what yet. That's what we're going to try to figure out. Which one of these numbers. Which is also less than 1.45. So when you see this setup, it's basically asking what number is between 1/4 and 1.45? So again, to compare these, we need to know what all these numbers are as one form. So again, I'm just going to convert them all to decimals. So I've got 1 divided by 4 gives me 0.25. I'm going to convert all these guys to decimals too. 2 and 1/3, so I just need to convert this 1/3 to a decimal and then put it behind the 2. So 1 divided by 3 gives me 0.3 repeating. So I'm going to write it as 2.33333 dot dot dot. I already have a decimal, 0.15. 1/5, I can just do 1 divided by 5, which is 0.20. Just put a 0 on the end. And then 100%, move the decimal point over 1, 2. So that just equals 1.00. So I'm basically trying to figure out which one of these decimals is between 0.25 and 1.45. Now these decimals are pretty small, so what might be helpful is thinking about it as money. What's between 25 cents and $1.45? Is $2.33 between that? No. So we're going to cross that guy out. Is 15 cents between the 25 cents and $1.45? No. Is 20 cents between 25 cents and $1.45? No. Is $1 between 25 cents and $1.45? Yes. So that one is our answer. Okay? So you got one last thing to try on your own. Try your best. Remember, these inequality symbols just mean that you're looking for the number that goes between 1/3 and 60%. If you have any questions, write them down. We'll go over it next class. Other than that, we'll see you next time. Bye.